All right, now another major aspect to your chart or graph are what we call the elements. The elements are kind of like the title, legends, things like that. And they have plenty of options to choose from, so it's really you with the eye saying to yourself, yep, that looks good, or that doesn't look good, or I'm not going to put that in there, I'm going to take this out, whatever. So I'm going to go through all of them with you, and hopefully maybe you can see using some of these in your own charts here. So what you want to do after you've created your graph, and I've already put one together here for us, go ahead and just kind of click anywhere on it. And really what you want to do, what you want to try to do is just make sure that you've kind of just activated the chart. You don't want to be in a situation where maybe you clicked onto here, or maybe you clicked onto one of the grid lines or something like that. Just kind of get it so where you're kind of like just up here somewhere, and you get that just single framing going around there. Now, the next thing here is this little button right here. It's called elements. Now, my thing is blink. I don't know what it's doing. Let me just zip out here just a little bit so you can see it better. So there it is there. I think because I had the screen in too small there, but maybe I'll just keep it like this. That's not bad. All right. Well, anyway, so you point to this. There it says chart elements, right? So we'll click onto that. You've got a number of different things in there. Now, as a default, usually what it does, it gives you the axes and it gives you the grid lines. Now, let me just show you what happens if you didn't have those. If I take the axes off, you see that? You lost, see what we did there? You lost the months, you lost your numbering along the side there, all right? And then also these grid lines that you see here, that too. So those two things are usually already turned on. And to be honest with you, so is usually the chart title, this thing up here. So that's usually already turned on for you. Now, let's take a look at some of these things. So the first thing, let's say, is with the chart title. And okay, you want to obviously have one of those. That's a good thing to have. So what we'll do is you can leave it the way it is. You want to leave it just as chart title. That'd be might be kind of dumb, but you could do it that way. But you can either click onto it and type in your own title, whatever you want to type in, all right, like that. And when you go to hit the enter key, then it goes in, all right? So you can do that. The other option would be to click onto it, go up to here, all right, hit your equal, all right, and then click on to the title that maybe you already have on your worksheet with your regular numbers here. So you can actually just kind of click onto that, all right? And then once you've done that, you go ahead and hit the enter key, and now that comes in. And now once you've done that, you can go over to the home tab here, maybe make the title bigger using the big A here, or the A up with the up arrow there. You can go here and you can make it bold or not bolded just by turning that on and off. You can change the coloring if you wanted to. So if you wanted to be a different color, maybe you want to go with like a red or an orange or green or blue or something like that, you can just go ahead and point to it and click onto that. You can also kind of modify where the title sits. You can actually go back to your chart title, and that little black arrow, you can click onto that and tell it that you want to do a centered overlay, and it just gets a little bit closer, or the bars get a little bit closer to it. So you can do either one. That looks fine, but a lot of people don't want to have a little extra space in there, so what they'll do is just go back in and change it back to above chart. So there you go, just kind of pulls it down a little bit. All right, so that's good there. And like I said too, these come in as a default. That's what you see here as far as the axes here. All right, now what you can do with this, you can kind of modify it a little bit. If you don't really care to see this, and all you care about is just the group items at the bottom there, you can actually go back into axes, click onto here, and tell that you don't want to see the primary vertical. So you click onto that, and then they can go away. That's up to you. I'm going to leave them on, but that's something you can do as well. All right, so now another area that we can look at, we don't need to do these in order, but we'll get to all of them eventually here, we have the legend, and this again too, I'll just say this, the legend usually will come up automatically too as a default. So usually it's over on the side, or sometimes it might end up on the bottom, but either way, if you decide, well, I don't really like it on the side, I like to maybe at the top below the title, then what you can do is go back to the legend here, hit the little black arrow, and tell it that you want it at the top, and there you go. And then if you think it's maybe a little too small, which I think so, you can click onto it, go back to your Home tab, and hit your big A few times, make that bigger. And you can also, too, make it bold, make that stand out. So there you go on that one. If you're not graphing a whole big chunk of data, and in this case we're not, another element that's pretty interesting is something called the data table. You put a little check mark in there, and you'll end up getting underneath each of the groups, as we see here, January, February, March, you end up seeing the numbers. Now these numbers are in order in that of what you see here. So they're in legend order, as you see here. So you've got Chips, and then Susan, and then you've got Igor, and so forth. You got them all in there. Pretty interesting. And you can also click onto that, this flag about right there, and you can go back in and make it a little bit bigger, like that if you wanted to, make it smaller. You can make it bold if you wanted to. I think bold might be good. Now another area we can look at is something called the axis titles. That's, so remember the axes are what you see here and here. And if you think you need to maybe give them some sort of a label so people understand what they are, what you can do is you can click onto that little check mark there. And what you'll end up seeing appear is axis title here and axis title on here. So you might want to say, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, at least with this graph, I mean, what these are. And if you decided that you really don't need the axis title, below here, you can always go back to where it says axis titles, hit the arrow, and tell that you don't need the horizontal, and you can just decheck it, and that goes away. All right. On the other hand, if you want to keep it, then what we need to do next is probably relabel it. So while this is selected, we could type in something like, months of, and then you could type in, let's say, 2025 or something like that. As you're typing it in, it goes up on the formula bar, but then when you go to hit the enter key, then it goes in at the bottom. And if you wanted to, you can make it just a little bit bigger, from there. Take off the bold maybe just so it doesn't stand out so much. And then the same thing on the side here, we can click onto that, and we can type in something like, well, this might be Canadian, and that's with an E in, by the way, Canadian, and then pesos, all right? So there's our Canadian pesos. We hit the enter key on that. There it goes. While it's still selected, we can do a big A few times there. Take off the bold. So there we go. I might, now that I think about it, I might click onto here and make that maybe a little bit bigger as well. So something like that. All right. So we'll go back into our elements again. Now, the next thing I want to show you. Now, another area we can look at is something called the data labels. All right. Usually, if you're going to be doing data labels, you probably aren't going to need data tables. Okay, you don't need that data table down there. What the data label does, it allows you to put the value, if anything, or I should say at minimum, allows you to put the value that the bar is actually representing. Now, as you see, I'm hovering over the data label, and you can see the numbers kind of pop up there. All right. Now, initially, the way it is not very orderly. I guess it is in order, but it's just it looks like a real mess out there. Usually when you do something like this, you'll probably want to get it so where the label might be, you might have it go vertical, so it's more sideways. It'll be a little bit less than the width of the actual bar, and you can either put it on top of the bar or somewhere within it. Now, to make this all happen, what you can do is you can go ahead and just kind of click onto where it says data labels there, and that will turn it on. Now, you can also then go over to the little arrow here and tell it where you want to put the labels. In this case, you can say, well, we'll put it on the maybe the outside end, something like that, right? And if you did that, and then you go a little bit further down to where it says more options, you get a little panel that pops up and it gives you a few more things you can do here. So initially, it's set up so where it's just putting the value in there, all right? You probably wouldn't want to put the category, because we can see that plain and simple down there, and you probably don't need to put the series in there because we know who each of the bars belong to because of the legend. So those are not things that we probably want to turn on, but at least, you know, the value is a good thing. We had also, before we got in here, we were telling it that we wanted to pick it and have it at the outside end, which is where it's at right now. Now, what we're going to do next is go over to this little guy here. This is the size and properties. Click onto that. Go into the alignment, all right? And you'll see where it says text direction. Right now it's set for horizontal, flat, all right? Hit that little drop-down arrow, and we can rotate it, maybe rotate it up at 270 degrees. Click onto that, and it flips them up. Now, you'll notice what happened. It only did it to the first series, which is the chip series, right? What we'll have to do is click on to the next number, any one of the next numbers. So like right here, I can easily grab this one. So I'm going to click onto that. Now that whole area becomes selected. I can then go back over here and change the direction there to 270 again, right? I can click on maybe this one right here and go back in there and change that also to 270, all right? Maybe click on this one here, change it to 270, and then last but not least, I'll click on this one here and make that one also 270. There we go. So now, there it is. Now you can go in there, you can make it bold, well, it's already bolded, but we can make it italic, you can maybe make it a little bit larger, change the color of it. But the other thought is, with all this, is that probably it might be a little bit better being inside. Now, the only problem with getting that label inside of the bar is that there are certain ones that are pretty short given the size that we've got here. Now, here's what we're going to do. We really don't need the data table. I mean, we're going to have all these numbers within the bars. We don't need that. So what we can do is we can kind of turn that thing off, all right? So what we'll do here is let me just kind of scroll over here a little bit. Click on there for the elements, find my data table, and turn that off, all right? And that gives me a little bit more height, I guess, for each of the bars, right? I can even go maybe as far as making it a little bit taller this way, and thus it'll proportionally make the bars taller, do something like that. So let's just say that'll work. So then what we can do is we can click on to each one of these, go back to the beginning, and I'll tell it that we want the labels to be where? Well, I think probably on the inside base might be good. So if we click on inside base, it puts it down at the bottom. Now, the other aspect about this is that what's happened is now it's black text, so it's a little bit hard to see. So what we can do while these are still selected is go to our home tab here, hit our font color, and either make it white or we can make it yellow, whatever you see fit. I'll just go with white for now, something like that. And I'll turn off the bold because that's making it kind of blurry looking. And then I can go to the next one here, click onto that. That gets that whole series selected. Put that in the inside base. So that brings that down there. That's okay. I mean, it's readable, but I think maybe I'll again make that white, I'll just click onto there, get rid of the bold. All right. Hit the next one, click onto that. Inside base, make that white. Click on the next one, inside base, make it white. Now that one, that doesn't look too good. I think we'll put that back to being, let's say, black, and maybe not as heavy. So we'll bring it maybe about, let's see here. That looks good there. All right. And then our last one here, we'll click on that. Inside base. And again, I think that might look better as a white. So we'll go ahead and click on the white there and turn off the bold. So now once we've done that, we can we can close this one up. And there we go. That's what it looks like. Now, you look at that in the base, you go, that just doesn't look, it just doesn't look right. It just looks like a big huddle of numbers down there. But that's just me. You might say, hey, Chip, there's nothing wrong with that. You're an idiot. But here's what we'll do here, though. If we click back onto the graph, go back to the elements, go back to where it says data labels is what we're doing, hit that little arrow, and what we can do is just change all of them back to being, let's say, or to being, I should say, inside end. See, there's the inside end, inside base, outside end, callouts, center. Center doesn't look bad either, right? But inside end is another way too. So if you do that one there, perfect, all right? Now another thing we can add to this is something called a trend line. A trend line gives you an idea based on the current information that we have, what is it going to be trending? In other words, if we were to look at, let's say, Susan's numbers here, okay, that'd be the one in orange. That's easy to see there, okay? If you looked at what she did in January, February, March, April, May, June, all the way through the year, would you say that her numbers are kind of trending towards the up position? Is it trending more going down, or is it even? In other words, when we look at predicting what might happen in January, okay, where do you think her number, her next bar would be for January, okay? Would it be up a little bit? Would it be down? Based on what we already have seen through the whole year, what would be that next bar? Well, that's what we call trending. Now, I've got a video on doing this on a regular worksheet, and that's in the module 5, the function formulas, and I've got a number of different ways that you can predict trending using trend and forecast and moving averages. You can actually kind of get an idea of where things are going, all right? But here with the graph, we actually have it kind of, that formula kind of built in here. The only downside to it is that it will only do it for one range of data, one series of data. And I'm just picking on Susan here, because she's my sister, number one, but is the fact that it's orange and we can see it a lot better here. So here's what we're going to do. If we go back, click onto the graph there, go back in our elements, all right? Here's our trend line, okay? So I'm going to go and click on to the arrow there. Well, actually, let me do this first. I'm going to, first of all, choose trend line, all right? It's going to ask me who or what I want to do the trend line on. And like I said, we're going to do Susan, all right? We can't go in there and choose more than one, all right? So we're just going to pick Susan, all right? So we click onto her, hit OK, and there it is. And that's just your standard trend line. Now you look at that and you say, okay, so the trending is going to be, it looks like it's going to be more, you know, somewhere in this area here for the next one, and maybe a little bit taller for the next one. That would be the prediction of it, right? So that would be hers. Now if I go back in there, take the trend line off, turn it back on again, it'll ask me now, who do you want to do it on now? And let's say I want to do Igor, okay? So I'll click on the Igor, and Igor happens to be the gray bar here, right? Hit OK on that one, and there's Igor's trend. His is trending down, all right, given what he did throughout the year. So just kind of an interesting look and take on things. And last but not least, I've got one more to show you here, and then I'll let you go. We have here something called error bars. This is a high-end statistical calculation that's made, and it originally, like when you first go for it, like I want to show you here, you click onto it there, it shows you kind of like a little, like almost like an I-beam almost, and it has this value here. And currently, the one that it kind of defaults to is your standard error, or what we call kind of like it's a little bit short of like the standard deviation. But actually, probably if you're doing this, it's usually the standard deviation that they go with, all right? We have percentage, we have standard, which is, like I said, a little bit less than what this is, all right? What it really is that they kind of indicate how far from a determined value is the true value of this. In other words, it looks at all the numbers and figures out what the standard deviation is, and it shows how far each of them is from the standard deviation, from that point of reasonable numeric values, all right? I would say that we don't really have a whole lot of data in here, but you can kind of get an idea when it shows the height of this thing where it should have been, all right? So it's basically showing you how much it is from the, from the standard deviation point of view, all right? So we have some examples of doing standard deviation in the Module 5 that you can take a look at in case you're a little bit more interested in that. But I would say in most cases, most people don't bother with this, all right? But if it's something that you want, there you go. If you don't want it, you can go back into the error bars there, take the check mark off, and it goes back to where it was. All right, so that's about it. So hopefully this this information comes in handy. Hopefully you can use some of this in your own graphs and charts that you do later on. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. Take care.